Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Great to have you along. And you know what? Before we even got started, I was getting a couple of good questions there. So, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go ahead and add in. Oh, you know what? That's not working. I wonder why that's not working. That's awfully strange. Something's not working. That's all right. I'll keep track on paper. There's always a technical issue here or there. That just happens. That's the way it is of the world. All right. So today we are going to jump into our lecture. What are we talking about? Well, let's find out. Let's go ahead and set things up. You know, the funny thing is I test all my tech before I start, and I didn't bother testing the little light bulbs because they always work. Of course, it's the one time you don't test that it doesn't. That's all right, though. We'll figure it out. Okay, so today, this is what we're talking about. The foundations of capitalism. All right. So what we have been doing this semester so far is kind of working through how capitalism evolved as an economic system. And today is when we add the last ingredient. There are actually 5 aspects of capitalism, but we are going to add today the 5th one, okay? And then we're going to go ahead and talk about how we actually practice it. And now, I want to be clear, there is no such thing as pure capitalism or pure socialism or pure communism or pure totalitarian and so on and so forth, right? There's always this kind of mix. And we're going to talk about today what pure looks like, but then we're going to talk about the mix that some purport that we follow here in the United States, okay? And when I say some purport, it means we can agree or disagree. That's the beautiful thing about this class, all right? So just to remind ourselves of, there you are, you're over there. Just to remind ourselves of, and I'm making sure, of what we've studied thus far. Let's take a look at this. So first, there's the profit motive, okay? Now, if you'll remember the profit motive, it's a moral concept that personal gain is good. Personal gain is all right. It's good. It's a philosophy of personal gain. And that we should always strive to better our material lot, okay? Meaning, personal gain is good, and we should always work to improve, to grow, to expand, to evolve, and to get more, and that it is a pretty much constant driving system. One of the readings in which we explored this was over with the industrial and social history of England by Cheney. And he said, the answer was a plain one. Enlightened self-interest was the incentive. Universal free competition was the force. And the question was, how are we going to get people to do the crap jobs? People will always do the crap jobs because you got to start somewhere. But they're always going to work to improve their gain in their own self-interest. Okay, that was the profit motive. And then we talked about free markets. Free markets, it's an economic system based on the principle of supply and demand with little to no government intervention. We're going to be touching upon this quite a bit today. Driven by the voluntary exchange of goods and services, each party seeking maximum gain. You can shop from whomever you want to shop, and it will always be with the idea of getting the most bang for your buck. and I can, within legal reason, sell anything I want at whatever price I want, always with the idea of getting maximum return. So I can't go too high in my prices, no one will buy. I can't go too low because then I can't meet the demand and I can't make money. I look for that equilibrium. That's the free market. Once again, Cheney talks about this in one of the readings. Men must be entirely free to act as they think best, to choose what and when and how they will produce. Best results will be obtained where the greatest freedoms exist, where men may compete with one another, freed from the trammels, at liberty to pay or ask such wages, to demand or offer such prices, to accept or reject such goods as they wish or can agree upon. If everybody else is equally free, the man who offers the best to his neighbor will be preferred. All right? So fancy language, but it basically comes down to free market. Offer whatever you want, pay, charge whatever you want, and eventually through this free market, things will work themselves out. Okay? And then we talked about private wealth or capital, right? This is what Max Weber was talking about in the Protestant Ethic and Spirit of Capitalism. Privately held hard assets, including money, securities, real estate, buildings, factories, equipment, stuff like that. Okay? And the quote from the reading that will kind of sound familiar to you: wealth as a performance of duty in a calling is not only morally permissible, but actually enjoined. It's required to build wealth. The parable of the servant who was rejected because he did not increase the talent which was entrusted to him seems to say so directly. To wish to be poor was, as is often argued, the same as wishing to be unhealthy. It is objectionable as a glorification and the works and derogatory to the glory of God. In other words, this whole be poor and don't chase after money and don't think about wealth, instead build treasures in heaven. Well, the Protestants said, one and the same, man. You are required by the scriptures to build wealth. Now, you shouldn't be ostentatious. You should be ascetic in your lifestyle. But building privately held hard assets was not only encouraged, but required to show that you were righteous enough to go to heaven. Pretty interesting. And then we talked about laissez-faire. The theory that economies operate best without any government involvement. Hands off, leave be, laissez-faire, just leave it alone. Let it work as a natural system. We saw this in a whole bunch of readings. One was Cheney, the other was Woods, Watts, and Anderson. A natural and sufficient economic force was always tending to act and produce the best results, except as far as it was interfered by external regulation. Nix on the regulation, right? Another quote that we had was laissez-faire was the economic theory of hands-off. According to this theory, economic adjustments follow certain natural laws which can be depended upon to work to the ultimate advantage of humanity, and these laws should be allowed to function without interference. So these are the admonitions of a laissez-faire system. Hands-off system, no regulation, so on and so forth. You remember all these from our readings, but I wanted to give us an overview because today we are talking about the last, which is the invisible hand. I need to get some spooky music and play spooky music when I say the invisible hand. Okay? So this is what we get to do today. Didn't know the Bible was based on capitalism. I know, right? Capitalism based on the Bible. Okay, so let's play with this. Let's come back over here. And let's talk about the invisible hand. Now, we're going to have two readings today that talk about the invisible hand. Now, the invisible hand was, in fact, coined, that phrase and that idea was coined by Adam Smith, who we will bring on board here in a moment. But we're actually going to start with a more recent essay that tries to give an example of the invisible hand. And this was by Leonard Read, and it's called I, Pencil. So let's go through this reading and kind of show how Leonard Read is trying to explain the idea of an invisible hand through the creation of a pencil. Okay? So let's do this. He first says, hey, listen, I'm simple, yet not a single person on the face of this earth knows how to make me. Now, it's not that, one person can't make a pencil. Kind of sort of can't, but no, he says no one person can make a pencil. No one person has the expertise. You could write a PhD dissertation in pencils, and you wouldn't know how to make a pencil. Here's his assertion. So he says, now remember, this is written from the point of view of a pencil. So when he says my and I and so on and so forth, it's the pencil talking, okay? Pencil says, my family tree begins, in fact, with a tree. Now, contemplate all the saws and trucks and rope and countless other gear used in harvesting and carting the cedar logs to the railroads, okay? Now, he goes on and says, think of all the persons and the numberless skills that went into the fabrication, the mining of ore, the making of steel, and the refinement into saws, axes, motors, the growing of hemp and bringing it through the stages to heavy and strong rope, the cookery and the raising of all the foods. Why, the untold thousands of persons had a hand in every cup of coffee that the loggers drink. So here's what he's saying. Even the very act of cutting down and transporting a log involves countless people. It involves saws, which involved mining, which involved refinement of ores and expertise and transportation of those saws and power and so forth. I mean, just the log alone, the food to feed the people, the coffee and so forth. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. He goes on. The logs were shipped. Can you imagine the individuals make flat cars and rails and railroad engines who construct and install the communication systems? Even the lighthouse keepers along the way assisted in my birth, and the harbor pilots. So he's going on to say that, listen, the creation of this pencil, even just shipping the logs, required, equipment, ships, railroads, harbor pilots, lighthouses, fuel, you name it. And of course, food and all that. Then he says, yes, and included are the men who poured the concrete for the dam of a Pacific Gas and Electric Company hydro plant, which supplies the mill's power. So even people who are in the business of creating power are contributing to the birth of a pencil. All right? Millions of human beings have had a hand in my creation, no one of whom even knows more than very few of the others. In other words, everybody, millions and millions of people are contributing to the creation of this one single pencil. And yet, no one of them knows more about pencils than anyone else. Now, you might say that the president of the pencil company knows more. Well, Reed says no, because the president of the pencil company doesn't know jack about the creation of saws and lighthouses and hydro plants and so on and so forth. And yeah, okay, so you know how to count pencils and you know the machinery for the pencils, but you don't know how that machinery was built. You don't know how the ore was pulled out of the ground to make steel for that machinery. So you're just contributing one teeny tiny little piece, dear president, as is everyone else. Okay. Let's see. Kiana says, we need to use hemp more, but it's so scrutinized because people debate. You know, it's really funny with hemp and marijuana. You can smoke hemp and it'll give you a really, really, really bad headache. You're right, though. I actually have a hemp bag, like a man purse, as my daughter calls it. Really great fabric, really great material. We could use so much more, but yeah, it gets all weirded out with that system. You're right. And by the way, I'm keeping track on the light bulbs. You don't see the light bulbs below because it's not working, but I'm keeping track. Okay, let's keep going. It is impossible for me to name and explain my antecedents, my ancestors. Does anyone wish to challenge my earlier assertion that no single person on the face of the earth knows how to make me, right? Oh, you have one too. That's very cool. Very cool. So, yeah. And this, of course, we're talking about a pencil, but this goes the same for a juggling ball. Millions upon millions of people were required to make this simple juggling ball. All right. Now we're going to get closer to the invisible hand stuff. So here is an astonishing fact. Neither the worker in the oil field, nor the chemist, nor the digger of graphite or clay or any who mans or makes the ships or trains or trucks, nor the one who runs the machine that does the knurling on my bit of metal, nor the president of the company performs his singular task because he wants me. Okay, that was a long-winded way of saying nobody's making a pencil because they want a pencil. Everybody is contributing what they contribute for their own reasons. Not because they like, hey, you need to go pour this concrete in this hydroelectric power dam for a power station because otherwise you won't be able to get a pencil. And it's like, I don't care about the pencil. Perhaps it is something like this. Each of these millions sees that he can thus exchange his tiny know-how for the goods and services he wants. Okay? So all these people are out there doing what they do, not because they have this undying love for pencils, but because they have needs that they need to meet. And by contributing their work, they, in exchange, get the money they need to meet their needs. Okay? There is a fact that is still more astonishing: the absence of a mastermind, of anyone directing or forcibly dictating or forcibly directing these countless actions which bring me into being. No trace of such a person can be found. Instead, we find the invisible hand at work. This is the idea of the invisible hand. Everybody's working to get what they need to meet their needs, but as we do so, we unconsciously create value for everyone that everyone can apply to doing whatever they want, including making pencils. I, pencil, am the configuration of creative human energies, millions of tiny know-hows configuring naturally and spontaneously in response to human necessity. and desire in the absence of any human masterminding. So Kiana says, this makes me think of art. Millions of people who are part of art process, such as canvas, painting, brush, and then the artist. Yes, and totally wild to think about. Okay, yes, we're going to come back to it. We're going to come back to it. All right. Now, before we get to kind of the guts of that, though, Kiana, we need to remember there's always this appeal for laissez-faire, okay? The lesson I have to teach is this: leave all the creative energies uninhibited. Merely organize society to act in harmony with this lesson. Let society's legal apparatus remove all obstacles the best it can. Permit the creative know-hows freely to flow. Have faith that the free men and women will respond to the invisible hand. Okay? So, let me ask you this, and let's come on over here and we'll explore this for a moment. Right now, are we making pencils? Based on what we just discussed, are we doing anything right now to contribute to the making of pencils? Or, as Kiana points out, to the making of art? Are we contributing to it? What are your thoughts? I'll go ahead and give us a couple of minutes. Let's give it an idea. Are we making pencils? Okay, let's come on back. It's just a quick question. So Kiana says, yeah, we're making pencils right now. Now, if we are following what we just discussed, the answer is yes. You see, we are making all kinds of things right now. In fact, you have no idea what you are making, right? As Zara says, yes. I believe, contribute to our own jobs. I think everyone is definitely contributing, says Owen. It's not as well seen. Right. Very nice. Very nice. You guys are getting it, right? We are making all kinds of things, but we have no idea what we're making. Let me show you what we mean. So, as I say here, and this is from me, like the Sumerians selling clothing to the nomads, which in turn allowed the nomads to expand their trading routes, thereby creating value, right now, I'm hopefully providing you with something that you can transform into value. I am delivering something that hopefully you can transform into some sort of value. However, what you do with that value that you have created from what I gave you, it's up to you, not me. Each of us offers some product or service with which others can derive greater value than we. In exchange, they give us some product or service with which we can create greater value than they. Each of us then takes that value we created from the product or service and puts it toward a purpose that makes the most sense to our needs. So, okay, you are signed up at Salt Lake Community College. This provides me an opportunity to teach a class. And in exchange for teaching this class, I am given money. All right. Therefore, the value that you provided me is money. You also provide me feedback on how I do my lectures and so forth, which then allows me to increase the value of my lectures, increasing money, so on and so forth. What I do with that money, you have no idea, and you don't care, right? But I then spread that money out, and other people create value with that which I purchase, and so on and so forth. So we're all doing something, but we're just contributing our small part to something larger. All right. So that's the idea of the invisible hand. But now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how Adam Smith described the invisible hand in theory, right? We actually started with the application with pencils. But now we're going to talk about the theory. But since we've been sitting now for, it's only been 25 minutes or so, but still, I think it's a good time to take a quick break. By the way, let's see, employees are the most valuable resource in any organization. Yes, actually, we're going to talk in depth about this, but it is labor, both with the head and with the hands, that create the value. It is employed labor, mental and physical, that transforms something, whether a product or service, into something that has increased value that can then be distributed by the invisible hand. So, emphatically agree. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a moment, and we're going to do our next juggling lesson. It's going to be our final juggling lesson. So let's go ahead and jump into this. Okay, bring that on down for a moment. Don't need that. So what we have done thus far is we started with one ball, right? And we did that simple toss. And it seemed ridiculously easy, and, why would I practice this? But then when we went to two balls and we did two tosses, we started to realize, oh, you know what? It's not as straightforward as I had thought, that toss. By the way, Kiana says employee does not work for the boss should work for the... Oh, we are so going to talk about this, especially starting next week, Kiana. Oh my gosh, are we going to talk about this? You're all set. Okay, so we have two balls. Now, one of the things I said was, whether you realize it or not, when you're juggling two balls back and forth, going from the right hand to the left hand as the starting hand, you are in fact juggling three balls. It's just the third ball is invisible. I guess that's our theme for today, right? Because watch this. I am right now juggling three balls. You just can't see the third, but the hand is going through the motion. So much so that I drop one. So what we're going to do is we are going to start with two balls in our right hand and one in our left. Now what you'll find is I kind of like to do this. I set up two balls in the palm held by my pinky and ring finger, and then this ball out there held by my middle finger, my forefinger, and my thumb. So that way I have good, this one is ready to go up. It's kind of like it's ready to be pitched if any of you play baseball or softball. And this one is ready to just do what needs to be done the moment this one is gone. So all we are going to do is toss 1, 2, 3. That's it. Just 1, 2, 3. And let them fall to the ground. So I'm going to catch, just because I have a chair here I don't want to chase after. But once again, you want to toss 1, 2, 3, and you want to hear the falling to the ground 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. Now, you want to hear. Now, remember, you're going to be sorely tempted to throw them all at once because you're going to freak out that you've got 3 balls and 2 hands and you've never done this before. So you're going to be all like, yeah, right? Just, if you need to do it really slow, do it really slow. 1, 2, 3, and let them fall to the ground in 1, 2, 3. You hear that? 1, 2, 3. Now, we're starting in the right hand, but what we want to do is each time switch the hand that we start in. So we're starting right, 1, 2, 3, and now we're going to start left. And just go back and forth. Let them fall to the ground and just do that. And then once you start to get the feel for it, you can start catching them instead of letting them fall to the ground, but just catch them in 1, 2, 3. And you're juggling. Now it's just one cycle, but still it's juggling. Remember, you are going to be sorely tempted to start moving forward. I don't know why this is. It's just natural. Everybody does it. So as you start juggling, you start going forward. Once you feel good with the 1, 2, 3, then you throw in a 4th. And once you got that 4th, it's done. Now, in the terms of can I juggle more than 3? So, Zara, I can juggle 4, right? Well, in various ways, I can juggle 4. It's actually very difficult to juggle an even number. The way it works, it's better with an odd number, including the hands. So 1 hand and 2 balls is really easy, right? 2 hands and 3 balls is an odd number. I can do 4. I am working on 5. I really struggle with 5, and I wish I could get it more easily. But one of these days, one of my goals is to get to 5. And so, yeah, just practice that, have fun with it. And if any of you are able to pull it off and you try it and so forth, let me know. I'd love to see it. Okay. And with the voice crack, let's come back to Adam Smith. Good to get up and move around. We're going to get up and move around a little bit later as well. Adam Smith, the godfather of modern economic theory, especially around capitalism and so forth. He wrote a book called, it's The Wealth of Nations, but Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. Here, this is where he explained the invisible hand. Now, Wealth of Nations is like this thick, and he only used the word invisible hand, I think, like once or twice, maybe 3 times. But it's a powerful idea. Let's see what he says, and let's come on over here. So he says, talking about a person working, right? He is the person working. He generally, indeed, neither intends to promote the public interest nor knows how much he is promoting it. By preferring the support of domestic to that of foreign industry, he intends only his own security by directing that industry in such a manner as to produce its produce may be of the greatest value. He intends only for his own gain. Okay, what the hell? Let's talk about what he just said. What he's saying is, listen, when you're working, you're there to help you. I mean, yes, companies love to say things like, oh, we're making a difference, we're curing cancer, our mission, it's more than just what we do. Whatever. All right, we'll talk more about that later. But at the end of the day, hey, what happened to my green screen? at the end of the day, you're working for a paycheck. You're working for a paycheck. I'll tell you a story. So when I was working with Intel, I was working at the factory, the fabrication site. And when you're working for a chip manufacturer, working in the fab is kind of a big deal, right? You know, this tip of the spear, this is where stuff happens. And I applied for a job inside of Intel with payroll, all right, for a variety of reasons. And I was interviewing with the person that I would be replacing. Later, she became my boss and now is a lifelong friend. She's a close friend of mine today, lives down the street. I call her my work wife. But then I was just meeting her for the first time. And I said, well, you know, how do you motivate employees to work when it's just for HR and all they're doing is processing payroll? Whereas I was coming from the fab and, we make really good stuff, right? And she says, people don't work to make chips. They work to make checks. And that totally reversed my thinking in an instant. The fact of the matter is, you may love what you do, you may love your mission, you may love everything, but if they stopped paying you, you would stop showing up to work. We work for the money. Zara says, people may initially be motivated by a paycheck, but they will ultimately depart due to poor management. Yeah, no, people don't leave jobs, they leave managers, right? We're going to talk about this in future lectures, absolutely. Now, why we stay with a job and so forth, there's a million reasons I stay with Salt Lake Community College. I mean, really, I love what I do. I mean, I really love what I do. I think I demonstrate this. Nevertheless, if they stopped paying me, there would be issues. I'd have to do something else. Okay, so first of all, Adam Smith is saying here, people work just to get what they need. All right, let's continue. And he is in this, as many other cases, led by an invisible hand to promote an end which is no part of his intention. Now, what's he saying here? Well, the invisible hand says, well, all this work you're doing, I'm going to distribute all this value that you've created to other functions that need that value. And whether it's your intention or not to make pencils, I got news for you. The value that you've created, dear worker, is going to make pencils. It's going to go to make cars. It's going to go to, do trainings. It's going to go everywhere. And it's not your intention that the value you create is sent to these other places. But it doesn't matter. You're working for yourself, and that's all that matters. Nor is it always the worse for society that it was no part of it. By pursuing his own interest, he frequently promotes that of the society more effectively. Hope that's right. I copied and pasted it. I'll have to check. Than when he really intends to promote it. Okay. Okay, I'm glad you prefer the class is badass. All right. I like being badass. Thank you, Kiana. So what's he saying here? He's saying, listen, even if you said, okay, I want to make sure that all the value I create is distributed to things that I think are important. You'd never figure that out. You don't know what's important. If you think that, well, you know what, education's important. All right, so you're going to figure out how to make camera lenses? Well, what do you mean? What does camera lenses have to do with education? Well, right now I'm delivering education through a camera lens. You can't figure all that out. So you just let the invisible hand do it. And the invisible hand is pretty darn good at doing it. I've never known much good done by those who affected to trade for the public good. It is an affection, indeed not very common among merchants, and very few words needed to be employed to dissuading them from it. In other words, even if you were to say, okay, let's say that you work for a nonprofit. All right, and that or you give your money to a nonprofit and so on and so forth. That's great. That's marvelous. I support nonprofits. You do. It's all great. However, that's a really, really crude implement to try to solve a given problem. So for example, I give to help the homeless. All right. Now, I'm not saying this to flex or anything of that BS. The reason I'm sharing this is to demonstrate to you that what I do is pretty ineffective. So if we're going to solve homelessness, we need to look at the cost of housing. We need to look at the availability of jobs. We need to look at pay rates. We need to look at how economies work in the system. We need to look at what healthcare is. There's so much we need to look at. So the fact that I give a few bucks to the road home and to the, Bishop's Storehouse and so forth, it is not helping. I'm going to do it anyway, and I encourage you to do it. But really solving the problem is much, much bigger than us trying to directly help it. We need to look at many other things, and the invisible hand is better than this, according to this theory. Remember, we can disagree, and next week we will. Okay, so all this comes down to, in other words, as we pursue our own economic self-interests, we inevitably benefit others, even if we have no intention to do so. And this benefit creates value with no deliberate intent, and yet nonetheless more effective than any designed intent. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. By the way, so Zara and Kiana talking about socialist countries. We are actually going to, let's come back over here. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about socialism starting next week, and we are going to talk about different approaches to it. There's actually a really good video out there about how different socialist countries approach homelessness. There's good and bad. I'll try to remember to send you a link to it. I think it's the series is called How Many Works, I believe it is, but I'll check for sure. Yeah, I'll send that out. Let's see. Yeah, build homes. Yeah, absolutely. We need that, more of that. Interesting subject, not actually helping. In a way, the money will go where it's needed, but I feel like at least giving spending power. Yeah. No. And this is kind of my approach and my theory, right? Is, okay, I know I'm not solving homelessness. It's not my intent to solve homelessness. I think, if anything, it's my intent to at least mitigate and alleviate some of the suffering while we try to find a real solution for homelessness, right? So, yeah, the solution is not in our donations. That's to help deal with some of the symptoms, but we're not shooting at the cause. However, I encourage everyone to give to the causes that they feel most speak to them. Okay, so let's talk about me and teaching. All right, so check this out. This is invisible hand happening. Why do I teach? Well, it's not for you. Invisible hand. Bear with me. Before this semester, I didn't know you existed. So you can't say, oh, you know what? I teach because there's this guy out there named Owen and Kiana's out there and Zara's out there and so forth. And I hear they're pretty awesome and I want to help them in their lives and I want to help them kind of do some cool things. So I am going to go ahead and earn a PhD so that I can teach to help these people accomplish their goals and so forth. No, I do this for my selfish reasons. Now, by the way, just so you know, one of my selfish reasons is I want to retire in 10 or 15 years. And when I retire, I want to retire in a thriving economy. And the better you will be at the peak of your careers in about 15 years. And so I want you to have awesome careers. I want you to just have lives that kick ass and take names and chew bubblegum. And not for you, for me. All right? And the same way goes the other side, man. So think about it. When you decided you were going to go back to college and you're going to go to college, you didn't say, you know what, there's this guy out there I've heard about. I think his name is Lon Schiffbauer. I really want to help that guy out. I want to make sure he has a really good standard of living and he can take care of his yard and so forth. So I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and go to college so that he can make money so that he can have a great life. This never entered your mind, ever. And yet, you're allowing me to do that. So here we both are seeking after our own self-interest and yet creating great value and opportunity for other people, even though that wasn't our intention at all. Okay? That's the invisible hand. Owen says, a good way to think about it, no matter how many people or how much money gets donated, the problem won't cease. Not until we figure out the root issues. And the root issues are really, really, really tough. However, the problem won't cease, but I'm old enough, and I'll, we'll come back here. I'm old enough that I can tell you I've been through situations in my life where tiny little handouts and helps and kind words have meant all the difference. So when I give to the homeless, it's not to solve the problem. It's maybe I can play a part in that tiny gesture that made all the difference for someone. That's my hope. I'll never know, but I'll let it go where it will. Laissez-faire. Yeah. Don't worry, we're going to challenge all this. All right? As a matter of fact, we're going to challenge it here next. So, by the way, real quick, if we go ahead and add the invisible hand, as we pursue our own economic self-interest, we inevitably benefit others, even if this was not our intent in any way. You are benefiting me. You don't care. I'm benefiting you. I don't care. Now, I say I don't care and you don't care as extremes. We're building a relationship to the point of where we start caring, right? I do, and I believe you do. Nevertheless, that wasn't our intent to begin with. Okay, so that is the invisible hand. So now we're going to check to see to what degree does the U.S. follow capitalism according to David Potter. Now, David Potter asserts that America follows its own system, its own form of capitalism. Now, just so you know, every single country follows its own form of whatever. There is no such thing as pure this, pure capitalism, pure socialism, pure communism. There's no pure. So the question is not, does America follow capitalism? The question is, what kind of capitalism does America follow and why? So This is going to be our last stretch, but it's a good stretch. So what I want to do is I want to do one more stretch break. All right. And I've got a new one for us. Here's our new stretch break. We're going to do some jazzercising. All right, let's do it. Oh, there we go. Oh, that felt good. Tell you what, and by the way, just to show my age, one of the video clips you saw there is actually a video clip that my wife and I used to work out to 30 years ago. So, it's all right. It's all right. Okay, let's get back and play with this. So I'm going to come back over here and bring that on up, and let's see what old David Potter has to say. Okay. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and ask this question. You know, I don't know what, Kiana, I'm glad you love it. I don't know what Quora is. I think it's like, Quora, you ask a question and you get an answer. But for the most part, they're lame-ass questions and they're lame-ass answers. So, whatever. But I saw this one time. Why do childless homeowners pay school tax? We don't use the school system, so we shouldn't we pay less or nothing at all? And just so you know, the vast majority of your property tax goes to the schools. So each year, when property owners pay taxes on their property, the majority of that goes to the school system. Well, if you don't have kids, then why should my taxes go to schools? So, give me your thoughts on this. I'm going to go ahead and set the 2-minute on this. Give me your thoughts. Should property owners without kids be required to pay taxes that go into a school system? Yes or no, and why not? Tell me what you think. All right, fantastic. Great comments. Um, and all spoken like good little socialists. Don't worry, I'll explain. All right. But yeah, so I believe that it benefits society as a whole. That's the whole idea. At some point, somebody paid for my school. You know, it's best for society as a whole. More education is less crime. This is a proven statistic. Yes, and our school systems are the future of America, and we want to have the best education. So that, you know, Mac is speaking after my heart, right? I want a really, really well-educated, you know, highly skilled, thriving workforce and economy when I retire. And so, yeah, you better believe I want to do everything I can to create that economy, because these kids are going to grow up and deliver a future economy. I want that economy to rock, right? Next generation. Now, Zara brings up redlining. Okay, this is a great example of how the education does matter for the future economic opportunities of a person, right? So lower tax properties have poverty, higher crime, right? So redlining is actually when this is bad, where those in power would actually look at a district and say, this district is predominantly black, so we're going to redline that, or you know, we don't want to give home loans for black families to move in that district. We want to keep the black families in this district. But then what happens is schools get money proportionate to the income of a given neighborhood. So if you have a rich neighborhood, you have a rich school. If you have a poor neighborhood, you have a poor school. And yet the home loans were given in such a way as to perpetuate that. And it had an effect later down. So education is important. Next generation will change the future, right? Absolutely. So you guys are nailing it. Okay, this is why in the United States we do this, because we believe that society and our economy benefit as a whole with an educated workforce. And the best way to do that, we believe currently, is through property taxes. Because remember, property should be a generating resource, a wealth generating resource. Now, just so you know, this is a form of socialism. Now, not socialism as in capital S, we're all freaking out, but it is a form of socialism in that we are taking money from those with property and redistributing it to those to create something better for the community, for society. So instead of looking out after the individual, which is what capitalism does, we look after society, which is what socialism purports to do. Okay? So, and by the way, in case you're curious, 60% of your tuition is subsidized by the state. That's why your tuition at Salt Lake Community College is so inexpensive compared to, say, like the U or what have you, okay? Your tuition is less expensive here because we subsidize it by the state, which is redistributing wealth to those who do not have as much to give them opportunity to create future wealth, all right? Now, I want to be clear, I'm not talking as a proponent of socialism with a big S. I'm talking about the idea of where do we set our priorities. And in the case of education, we have decided to some degree, K through 12 and is going to be off of the state and taxes. And some community college, yes. Now, other countries will do K through 12 plus 4-year college. So other socialist countries, college is paid for completely. There's been talk about doing that at the community college level, but the United States, we tend to steer clear of that. Okay, so let's continue on here. So here's what Potter says. The fact that the masters of capital have never been really in full control means that they have never been able to set the goals of the American economy. Instead, this is the second major economic corollary of democratic commitment. The goals of the economy have been set by the democratic philosophy rather than the theories of capitalism. So what Potter is saying here is, listen, the theory of capitalism, which you guys and I know really well because we just studied the hell out of it, the theory of capitalism has never been in full control of the U.S. Instead, we really like democracy. And democracy, to some degree, runs counter to pure, unadulterated capitalism. And so when the two kind of butt heads, democracy more or less kind of gets a priority, kind of gets a stake at the table. But this is what we struggle with. By the way, we still struggle with it today. Ad nauseum. We still struggle with it. Here's, once again, going by Potter, right? Potter is not speaking for me. Potter is not speaking for you. We are allowing Potter to offer these ideas, and we explore them. Historically, what have American people expected from their economy? They've not cared much for maximum efficiency, which is what the theorists of free competition are constantly talking about. In fact, they have tolerated immense waste of the natural resources. You and I, when we're buying things and doing things, we're not saying, gee, I hope this was created with maximum efficiency in mind. It's like, no, I want what I want, okay? They have not sought the elimination of inefficient or marginal producers, which again is one of the presumed merits of free competition, but have often gone to the aid of marginal producers, especially in agriculture. Now, let's talk about this. Potter picks on agriculture because it's easy to pick on in terms of subsidies, but everything gets subsidies to some extent or another. I just mentioned that education is subsidized. We subsidize technology. We subsidize all kinds of things. But now, Potter talks about agriculture because a great deal of agriculture is subsidized. Well, a great deal. Here's a chart that was put out by the Farm Bureau, USDA, whatever the USDA stands for. Department of Agriculture. There we go. U.S. Department of Agriculture. What you see in gray is what the farmers actually produced. Okay, the value of what they produced. What you see in red is what the government gave the farmers to subsidize this. Okay, so additional monies. So you notice that in like 2011, 12, 13, farmers were making money hand over fist just by being farmers. So they didn't get a lot of subsidies. But you notice as things dropped off, like in 2022, but this is because of the pandemic in part, they were subsidized a great deal. By the way, you and I were subsidized during the pandemic, right? We got checks, but the farmers got a lot there, right? So in some cases, gosh, in 2020, the subsidies almost doubled their income. Right? But in other cases, subsidies mattered less. Now, by the way, here is our first, not our first, but here's where we have an opportunity to play our game. So, we are going to play our favorite game show, What's in the Box? Okay? So, what is in the box today? This is a form of agriculture, something produced by agriculture, that is the most heavily subsidized product of all of agriculture. What do you think is in there, and why do you think it's so heavily subsidized? So, and you can Google it. The answer's in Google. What's in the box? The most heavily subsidized product in agriculture. Mac wins it. Mac, it is corn. Oh, for heaven's sake. There it is. Yay, corn. Okay. It's interesting why corn is so heavily subsidized. So, number 2 is wheat. And that's because we love our bread. Wheat is everywhere. Wheat. Wheat for everyone. Bread for everyone. Well, then why does corn outdo wheat? Because corn is used not only for human consumption, but it's also used for beef consumption. So cattle consume corn, so it helps produce beef. And then we also use corn to create, I think it's called ethanol, right? So we create fuel out of corn. Therefore, by subsidizing corn, the U.S. government is able to help the consumer, eat their tortillas, their corn tortillas. It is able to help the beef industry, the consumer through beef, and it is ethanol. There it is. Yes, ethanol. And to help fuel, right? So Mac, Zera, absolutely. We feed it to the animals. So that's why corn is so heavily subsidized. Now, what's the principle at play here? The principle is the U.S. feels that we should make certain things as affordable and easily accessible as possible. And this includes food and power and water. So think about this. Think about water. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you took a shower this morning. I'm guessing, right? How much did the water cost? Now, you don't know. You don't know because it is so cheap that you freaking bathe in the stuff and you don't give a single thought to how much is this water costing. By the way, once you start taking care of a garden and a lawn and so forth, you start to think about it a little bit more because you're dumping gallon after gallon after gallon all over it, 3 times a week. Anyway, the point is, the U.S. government has tried to make things like wheat and corn and water and dairy and power as affordable as possible so that it can benefit everybody and provide opportunity for the economy. The North Star is economic health and growth. All right? The North Star is not how do we help the people. It is how do we help economic growth. And it just so happens that by helping the people, you help economic growth. That's what Potter here is asserting. Okay, let's come back over here. If we look not to theory but to experience, we may find that the only economic policy that the American people have always insisted upon and are consistently applied is the system should operate in such a way as to give the bulk of the population access to sources of wealth. Okay, so it's not just sources of wealth. It's access to anything that provides economic opportunity. Education provides access to economic opportunity, so we should provide education. Affordable power, affordable food, provides access to economic education. Affordable gasoline. You might complain about price gases here, and I get it, but we have some of the lowest gas prices in the developed world because we do tax it, but not onerously as they do in other places. This is because we believe that affordable power means economic opportunity. And by the way, we subsidize the oil industry up the wazoo. Your taxes have already paid for the oil because we want to make it affordable. I know it doesn't feel affordable, but trust me, it is. So we want to give everybody access to wealth, which means our laws, rules, and regulation around credit mean just about anybody can get credit. I know it's less right now because of the interest rates and so forth. But the point is getting credit, getting a home, buying a car, getting student loans, getting access to all this wealth, student loans, small business loans, all kinds of ways that we can invest in ourselves, which then equates to an investment in the economy. That's what the American economic system is all about, according to Potter. Continuing on, one of these is the goal of maximum opportunity for the individual, arising from the strong American belief in the dignity and worth of man. Now, I want to be clear, we're talking about the strong American belief. That doesn't mean we have figured it out. It doesn't mean that we practice it in all ways, or even well for that matter. Nevertheless, we have this American belief in the dignity and worth of man, which is everybody should have an opportunity to succeed or fail. Once again, I want to be clear. I don't know that we do this terribly well, but in our hearts, we really want to. And I know I really want to. I want to live in a country where we believe that everybody, when given the opportunity, can forge their own path. And so therefore, the American economic system, according to Potter, is one built upon the idea that if anybody gets a leg up, if we can just help people out, they're going to go off and do great things, which is why we, invest in scholarships and subsidize education and small business loans and so on and so forth. Do we do it very well? Not always. All right, I want to be clear. Nevertheless, this is an aspiration. This is something we long for and we hope for, and we're always trying to press toward. Okay. The other is the goal of high and steadily improving standard of living. Yes, arising from the fact that American society began its major growth at the moment in history when, for the first time since the beginning of the world, the productive system was capable of yielding a steadily increasing surplus above the bare necessities. Key, this is big. All right, this is big. Here's the thing. All throughout human history, we were just lucky to stay alive. I mean, we were dying. We were dying all over the place. So if we could just manage to stay alive and meet our basic needs of food, water, and shelter and safety, we were happy. But then the Industrial Revolution came along and said, you know what? We don't have to just meet our needs. We can create a surplus. And it just so happened that America started to come into its own during the Industrial Revolution, which means if you look at the cultural memory of the United States, we, and I say we in that we're here, but, Americans have never really known a time when life wasn't better 10 years later for the next generation. Things are always getting better because we always have more wealth, more surplus, more opportunity. And so it's kind of part of our cultural memory and expectation that TV screens are going to be bigger and flatter and smarter, right? This last week, I just hooked up Google Fiber. Holy cow, Google Fiber. And yet, I was part of the generation that was doing the dial-up modems, and we were happy to get, 48K a minute. I'm not making that up. It's just, it's crazy. Things are always getting better. Therefore, Potter says, our economic system is one that makes this possible. Okay, Zara, now, good point, except for cost of living. Here's one of the issues that is often brought up is that the cost, so like going off and buying your own home. In the past, that was a given, and then later it became, a challenge. And now it's like, is it even possible, right? Not the problem, let me restate that. A challenge is that we expect an ever greater standard of living, okay? So, for example, we've all got one of these. You got one of these. What? How in the hell do you have one of these? You're poor. You're a poor student. How do you have one of these? I jest. The point is, we all expect to have one of these. We all expect to have incredible connectivity. We all expect to have amazing cars and homes and so on and so forth. And so we don't really build anymore or really want really affordable housing or apartments and so on and so forth. Nobody wants to build them because nobody wants to pay for them. And because the standard of living is going ever higher, the affordability of that standard of living is getting lower and lower. Cost of living going up, right? Yeah, almost impossible to buy a home. I totally get it. Totally get it. Okay, let's keep going. We're almost there, folks. Perhaps the most convincing proof of the extent to which American standard is soared above the physical necessities is not statistical at all, but lies in the fact that Americans no longer buy most of their purchases in response to actual physical need. Need has been transcended as an economic stimulus, and goods are bought for comfort, convenience, recreation, style, and prestige. And we're actually going to go far more in depth on this in future lectures. But this is really true. We don't really buy things anymore because if we don't buy them, we will die. I mean, yeah, we buy food, but even the food we buy is kind of pretty. You shop at Trader Joe's. That's ludicrous. They're expensive and it's hoity-toity food. But, I really like their frozen chocolate-filled eclairs that you can set out for 9 hours and have them rise. And then you put on a nice egg wash and then cook it for 25 minutes. And they're just amazing. Okay. You didn't buy that for food. You bought that for comfort, convenience, style, prestige, things like that. We're going to talk more in depth about that later. Kiana says, our house has almost tripled since we bought our home. We have a phone, and it's absolutely, phones have become necessary. Tripled. I know. It's crazy. It's nuts, bananas. Our home, oh my gosh, it's more than tripled. Now, we've owned our home, we've been in this house for 20, getting on to 23 years, and that's more than tripled, probably quadrupled. It's nuts, just absolutely nuts, okay? And there we go. That is it. You've done it. I apologize that the lights weren't working, but I've been keeping track. Silicon Slope is really increasing the value a lot. I'm from the Bay Area. I'm from Silicon Valley, and I saw this all happening for Silicon Valley. So I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt and worn it out and turned it into rags for my car. Yeah, absolutely. Email me with email here, and I will take care of you. You're doing great. Thank you very much for joining today. A little bit of a lighter crowd, but I get it. It's the day after a day off, and sometimes it's a little hard to get fired up. Don't think I don't get it, right? But I'm going to stick around. Owen, you are very welcome. I appreciate your input today. Absolutely. I'm going to stick around if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to discuss. Of course, if we need to move over to a Zoom meeting, we absolutely can. But otherwise, have a fantastic week, and we'll catch you around next time. And until we talk again, have a fantastic day. Hey, Mac, thank you. Kiana, you bet. Zara, you bet. We'll see you later. Kiana, we can totally set up a Zoom meeting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that up. And then what I will do is I will email you through Canvas. I will email you a Zoom link, okay? And that will work just fine. So just hang on a moment. And yeah, I'd love to talk about your business stuff. I have a note right here to myself. It's right there. Kiana business meeting. I have a note to myself to set this up, so I'm glad you're doing it. So it'll be good. So expect an email from me. Let's see here. Canvas. Okay, Kiana, I just emailed it to you, so give me a moment and I'll sign into it. Everyone else, looks like we are good. So I'm going to go ahead and close out the stream, and we'll see you next week.